Hey, it's Trip here from the 87th. This video is about high altitude dive bombing using 30 and 45 degree dive angles in BMS 433 update 4. Before I get going, let me mention that the document that I wrote that describes the tips and techniques for this procedure is in the description section below. It's a Dropbox file. Dropbox is a file sharing utility. You don't have to have Dropbox installed on your computer. You can retrieve the file using the link below. And in that file I talk about some other things. I talk about range rules that Red Dog established for Kotar, just kind of my take on it, and a little blurb about strafing. But for most part, the document talks about the procedures, the tips and techniques, the math involved for this procedure to work effectively for you. Now, the nice thing about the procedure is I know, based on this slant range that I pull out of a table that's in that document, that I'm going to hit the target each and every time. I'm not going to miss. And I also know that I'm going to have a constant 45 or 30 degree dive angle onto the target. There's nothing wrong with doing, high altitude dive bombing visually, but this technique just really nails it. I mean, I've seen, and I've tried to do it visually, but I've noticed my dive angle, it could be 5, 10 or more degrees, off, instead of being a constant 30 or 45 degree angle. You call it a 30 degree dive, but it's really not. It's 15 or 20. So if you're going to do a 30 or 45 degree dive, you might as well do a constant 30 or 45 degree dive. So that's what this technique allows you to do. Also, that you see these clouds out here. If you get up to the range and you're trying to do a visual approach onto the target, and a cloud comes between you and the target, just about the time you're getting ready to roll in, you're not going to be able to know exactly when to start your roll in, and you may miss the target. So this technique allows you to at least start the dive at the appropriate time. Now, obviously, I'm not saying to do this in instrument conditions. I'm just saying that if a cloud comes between me and the target, I don't care, because I've started my dive, and hopefully very, very shortly thereafter, I'll be past the cloud and everything will be fine, and I can continue the approach. So that's an advantage of this technique. If you're very, very high doing this and the visibility is kind of low, you may not be able to see the target. It's so small. So if you're trying to do it visually, that might be difficult. This technique will avoid that problem. All right, so I go into this table. I need two things. I need to know my altitude above the target, and I need to reference my dive angle that I'm going to use. So this first pass, we're going to do a dive angle of 45 degrees. And as I say, I've got a target up at Kotar range identified here. I'm going to TMS up on it and lock the target. And now I know my exact slant range is 24.4 miles from that target. Its elevation, if it wasn't Kotar, I know Kotar because it's 2,854 feet for all the targets up there. But if I didn't know the elevation after I locked the target, I could come down to the steer point ICP button, and it would tell me what the elevation was in this area here. So what I'm going to do with that 2,854 feet is, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to round it up to 3,000, because I'm not good at subtracting 2,854 feet from anything. So I'm going to round it up to 3,000, and I want to subtract that from my altitude that I'm at, that I'm approaching the target at, in this case 21,000. So that's going to come out to be 18,000 feet. So if I go into the table in that document at 18,000 feet and 45 degrees dive angle, I come up with a slant range of 4.5 nautical miles, again red in this section of the HUD, and it's only red in CCRP. If I was in CCIP, it would be an entirely different number. That number is telling you the distance from you to the pipper, where the pipper currently is, so that's not any use to us. So we go back to CCRP. At 4.5 miles, I want to start my roll in. Now, I have to say that in the higher speed range, and the speed range between 350 and 400 knots is what I've tested this for. In the higher range, I find that I have to add maybe 2/10 to these chart values, but that's only for the 45-degree dive. The 30-degree dive, it works beautifully. The number right off the chart, whether you're doing 350 or 400 knots, it'll work beautifully. But in the high speed range, for the 45-degree dive only, if you add 2/10 as kind of a lead point, maybe you could think of it that way, it works out much better. And the difference being that if I didn't add the 2/10 and I rolled in with 400 knots on a 45-degree dive, I'm going to roll in, pull down to 45 degrees, roll back upright, switch to CCIP, and with those values I would have a very short tracking time, a very short amount of time to get the pipper over the target to release the bomb. But by adding 2/10, I give myself more time to track the pipper over the target. Again, using 350 knots, whether you're 30 or 45-degree dive, you have plenty of time to track the pipper over the target. Works beautifully. So just that's a technique I use. Add 2 or 3/10, no more, just 2 or 3/10. All right, I'm going to let the program run here. And so we're all set up. We're headed for the target. We're going to lock it up here and CZ out of it. We're 23 miles, 400 knots, 18,000 feet above the ground. Again, it's 4.5 plus 2/10. 4.7 miles is where I'm going to start my dive. Now, one thing to note, a technique that I found was right now the flight path marker is just to the left of the bomb fall line. When I roll in on the target, I always roll toward the bomb fall line. So if the bomb fall line's to the right, I roll right. When I'm inverted, I take a look at where the bomb fall line is and I roll away from it. And that'll have the effect of recentering the bomb fall line on the cue. Now, it only has to be touching the wings here someplace, but I like to have it going right through the center as much as possible. So I'm just going to go ahead and make the drift correction here. We've got 14 knots of wind here, a crosswind. So I'm going to make a little drift correction here to try to hold that flight path marker right over the center of the bomb fall line. Now in this case it doesn't matter whether I roll left or right initially, but it does make it easier if you roll away from the bomb fall line. It's not a problem if you do it wrong. It's just that you're going to have a little bit of banking to do to get the pipper to, to track back over the bomb fall line. All right, so 400 knots, 21,000, which is 18,000 feet above the ground. We're looking good. Let me pause it for just a second and say that if I was a lot higher, like up at 24,000 feet, and that's as high as the table goes, 24,000 AGL, so that would account, you could be up at 27,000 feet bombing at Kotar and you'd be fine. But up at those really high altitudes, if you try to maintain 400 knots, you're going to find that with any load at all or any drag index at all, you're going to be stroking the burner just to maintain 400 knots. So, just be aware of that. So doing it at 350 knots would be, perfect, up at the high altitudes. So be aware of that. All right, here we go. We're looking for 4.7 miles, and we're going to roll in on the target. We're going to pull the throttle idle, speed brakes, 45 degrees nose low, and then roll back upright and switch to CCIP. Sounds like a lot of stuff, but it's all instinctive. So we're looking for 4.7 miles. Don't even have to see the target. It's down there below us someplace. Now, let me pause this again and tell you another cool thing about this technique. I only have to have the flight path marker over the bomb fall line as I get very near the target, which is where I am right now. If I'm back a couple, 3-4 miles, I can jink left, right. I can make any kind of turns I want. It's just that the closer I get to my 4.7 slant range, the closer I want that flight path marker to the bomb fall line in preparation or in getting ready to roll and pull down. So this allows you to jink you know, which is something you might want to be doing if you're, you know, flying into an area with AAA or something like that. You don't want to be flying at a constant wings level, altitude, and airspeed, you know, for any length of time, making yourself a perfect target for the gunners. So this technique allows you to do that. Just remember that as you approach 4.7, you need to be back as you see it here. All right, so let's unpause, and we're looking for 4.7 DME. Right there, we roll over, speed brakes, pull down. We're going to roll away from the bomb fall line. Go switch to CCIP. Now we don't, well, yeah, we do. We got a lot of tracking time here. Look at this. I got 45-degree constant angle. Flight path marker is on the 45. And I'm tracking very nicely, very nicely. Pickle. Okay, the bomb came off at about 5,600 feet, something like that. And we do some chaff and flare and just do some maneuvering here to not make ourselves an easy target. And we're off. All right, so that is the technique for 45 and 400 knots. Let's go back into CCRP and climb out here, and we'll set up for a 30-degree dive using 350 knots and some other low altitude. Let's go up to 18,000 feet, and I'll tell you why we're going to 18,000 feet. 18,000 feet is going to work pretty cool because for a 30-degree dive, you don't even have to reference the table. And what I do, incidentally, is I have the little table printed out and cut out and stuck under the glass on my desktop for, you know, easy reference. But for a 30-degree dive, if your altitude above the ground is, for instance, 9,000 feet, 12,000 feet, 15, 18,000 feet, if you can divide those numbers easily by 3, that'll tell you the slant range. So I'm going to go up to 18,000 feet MSL, which is going to be 15,000 feet above the ground. So 15 divided by 3 is 5 miles. So that's going to be my slant range. I don't even have to refer to the table. So I'm just going to roll in at 5 miles slant range from 18,000 feet, since that's 15,000 feet above the ground. All right, so, and we're going to do 350 knots on this one. Now, if small arms fire or man pads or something are a problem, it's not a secure site that you're diving on, you might want to try a different technique like laser guided bombs and buddy lasing. You can still do the high dive from, you know, high altitude and release your bomb. It's just that your buddy's going to laze it down to the target while you pull off and evade. Alrighty, 18,000 feet, 12. We're looking for 5 DME. So again, at 350 knots, I'm not even going to add a 0.2 or 0.3 to it. It's going to work beautifully, as you'll see. So I'm looking for 5 DME on the slant range. Got a little bit of roll here I got to take care of. There we go. All right, 5 DME. Now you'll notice we'll have a lot of tracking time on this one, and we'll get down probably pretty low because we know it's a secure site, and we'll probably get down pretty low before we release the bomb. 5 DME. Today. Sometime. All right, here we go. All righty, 5 DME, roll, speed brakes, pull, 30 down, roll upright, CCIP, and track over the target. We have lots of time to do this. Constant angle. Now, if I needed to, I could pull up and release the bomb, and it would come off at whatever altitude. But since I know the site's secure, I'm just going to continue on this way. Altitude. And release the bomb at 5,800 feet, I think it was, something like that. Do my safe escape maneuver and, you know, get out of Dodge. Okay, so that is the technique. Read the manual. It might help you understand it a little bit better. If you have any questions, just post them in the comments section. All right, that's it. Hope this helps, and trip out.